it isn't just the right of secularists and secularism to speak about women's rights. And I think it's quite possible to do that from within a Quranic framework as well. And in fact, that is partly what I've done in my own work, which is to say that I've tried to read the Quran on behalf of sexual equality. And there are, broadly speaking, two elements to my argument. One of which is that the Quran's categorical rejection of kind of a patriarchal imagery of God as father or as male or even as created actually gives us what I call a sort of anti-patriarchal episteme, a Quranic episteme within which we can read the Quran as the word of a God who is not in any way gendered, and who really there are no good theological reasons to assume would, for some, unaccountable reason, that this God would favor men just simply because they're biologically males. The second part of my argument has to do more with some of the foundational teachings of the Quran, which but which actually say very clearly that women and men were created from the same nafs, or the same self, or the same soul, and that both of them have been endowed with moral choice and personality, that both of them act as God's vice-regent on earth, and both of whom have the mutual obligation to enjoin the right and to forbid the wrong. And so this is the broad template within which I then interpret the rest of the Quran's teachings, including those which sometimes treat women and men differently with respect to certain social issues. Now, a criticism that's often made by Muslim feminists is that the Quran is a text that addresses males and addresses male authority in terms that suggest that women are not agents. Basically making a distinction between principles in the Quran that I think can be applied across time and space, as well as what is within the Quran historically contingent. So I'm very well aware of those verses that speak to male authority, and I see that as a historical contingency, which is to say that the first audience that the Quran addressed was a 7th century tribal Arab patriarchy, and it spoke to them in terms that I think made sense to those particular people. But that patriarchy is long gone, and I don't see any theological compulsion to take it as the sole focal point for interpreting the entire Quran. And my point is that scriptures have, shall we say, more than one meaning, and that they encompass a horizon of ethical possibilities, and that it is then for Muslims of each generation to try and actualize those possibilities in their own time. And so this is a very sort of a quick and abbreviated version of a long and complex argument, but my point is that we can, and in fact we should, read the Quran on behalf of sexual equality, certainly not to degrade women, to oppress women, to treat them as second-class citizens. And I do realize that just simply rereading the Quran is not going to ensure Muslim women their rights. We also have to get rid of oppressive Muslim regimes. But then to me, that's a political problem, not a religious one. And I always like to point out that some of the worst despotisms in the Middle East and North Africa have been secular in nature.